Okay. At some point, there will be the launch of the program. I think things will pop, huh? Don't be scared and say, hey, what's going on? It will be okay. So be alerted that some things will pop at some point as the program is being launched. Have no anxiety. All is well. Okay. Welcome, viewers, those joining us live. Welcome to this live broadcast. We're coming to you live from Hotel Protea in Kololo, Kampala. And this morning we are having a discussion on growing growth and economic opportunities for women. We have several institutions which have put forth effort to make this happen. And this includes Care, the School of Women and Gender Studies of Makerere University, IDRC and CRDI of Canada, and of course, the main organizer, Economic Policy Research Center. And this morning, we will get an explanation which is more detailed, but the agenda this morning is going to pertain, as I said, growth and economic opportunities for women, specifically on the factor of unpaid care work. Keep that in mind if you're watching us live, unpaid care work. It's something you might know, but you may not associate it with what I'm saying now. In a little while, we shall get an explanation of what it is all about and how it interfaces with the factor of finding growth and economic opportunities for women. It's especially the women who are affected in this area of unpaid care work, and we shall get the understanding of what it means and what can be done to make sure that situations improve in that area and more women come into the paid workspace, or how those two can work together. We will have some opening remarks as we proceed, and later on we will have a panel discussion, and then we shall have the launch of this program. And let me read it. It says, from promises to actions, shifting gender norms and public perception about unpaid care work in workplaces and families in Uganda. That's a long sentence, but it involves shifting norms, gender norms, and the way the public perceives unpaid work in workplaces and families in Uganda. So to deliver to us our opening remarks, I would like to invite Professor Grace Pantebia Chomuhendo from the School of Women and Gender Studies of Makerere University. Professor, you're welcome.
I will now remove my mask. I'm here standing in for my Vice Chancellor, Professor Nawangwe, who is not able to be with us here, and he's not able to connect by internet. So on behalf of Makerere University, I would like to welcome all of you who are here present, and also those who are online. It is an honor to have all of you at this point when we are launching a very unique project that is addressing the heavy burden of unpaid care on some people, especially women. Makerere is a lead institution in Africa. We are a research-led institution. So this project fits in very well within Makerere University Strategic Plan. We promote and support research that is going to be useful for our economy, for Uganda's development, for Africa, and we fit in very well in the Sustainable Development Goals, and the theme of not leaving anyone behind. We know and we are aware that all of us, in one way or another, have either provided unpaid care or we have benefited from unpaid care. It is so important that most of the time it's normalized and we take it for granted. But we know at one point or another there is a burden and there is evidence to that. Makerere supports this project of the consortium which includes Makerere University School of Women and Gender Studies as the PI, and the principal investigators come from Makerere University, and the other core consortium members include EPRC, which is also housed in Makerere, a research organization known globally and in East Africa, and Care International, Uganda office. They too have been they are very core in advancing research that will improve the lives of women and men. We know and we are sure that this research will not only inform policy and also be included in the development agenda, but it's also part of the research in the university that we feed into our curriculum. So we do appreciate and at this point thank IDRC with their partners who have supported this project. And we also want to thank them further because there are so many other projects that have been supported by IDRC as we pursue jointly for the better world in Uganda, but also in the rest of the world. So on behalf of Makerere, I do want to welcome all of you and thank you and wish you good deliberations. And Makerere is looking forward to the publications that will come from this research and will support all the key partners in this research to advance the cause. As I said before, this is a unique project. It's not the ordinary. We stopped doing ordinary research projects. We now deal with research projects that will improve and inform development. I want to stop here and thank all of you for listening to me, and I wish you good deliberations, both online and also those who are here present. Thank you very much. Now I will speak as Grace Banteva Chomuhendo, the principal investigator of this research. I would like to welcome all of you once again. We just have, because of time, protocol observed. I know there is civil society, I know there is academia, I know the different organizations are present. Please humbly accept my welcome and the welcome of the Vice Chancellor. This project, as the Vice Chancellor mentioned, there's a consortium, and at this point I would like the members of the consortium to stand, and that includes members from EPRC. Could you please stand, led by Dr. Sarah Sewanyanda for recognition, and then EPRC team, and Dr. Madina and the ED, for recognition, and then I would like the Care International team also to stand for recognition, and then the team from Makerere University also to stand for recognition. Unpaid care work is pivotal to our lives and well-being. However, regrettably, it's widely undervalued and unrecognized. And this work is predominantly done by the females. And evidence from UBOS and other research show that girls and women spend over 24 hours per week in what we classify as unpaid work. This unpaid work never even appear in our statistics. So it means they do twice the work as men and boys do. That has implications. We note as a research team that the COVID pandemic also has increased the burden of unpaid care and has increased the demand for home care. And who is affected most? The evidence that has come out shows that women and girls have been affected more than boys and girls. And we see papers and in newspapers how many of the girls have been even are dropping out of school because of the care work, and some of them even ended up being abused. We know that in Uganda, we have had progress in terms of gender, increasing women's participation in the labor market. But women predominantly are in the informal sector, and majority of them work as unpaid family labor. Evidence also shows that women increasingly enter into the labor paid work, but that has not really reduced the unpaid care. They are in the labor market, they are in these big positions, but the unpaid care remains intact, normal, undervalued, and accepted. So, with support from IDRC, and with the evidence that we saw, there was need to have different strategies, and that we needed support that gives us the evidence that it is possible to shift, to redress unpaid care for the betterment of both men and women. And that's the title of our project, From Promises to Action, Shifting Gender Norms and Public Perceptions and Unpaid Care in the Workplaces and Families in Uganda. The project is carefully crafted, and we build on existing models which we'll adopt, and one of them is the Care Power model. That model has been used for other issues like gender-based violence, but we are now tailoring it to unpaid care, to shift the unpaid care work and redistribute it, and ensure that we explore the strategies that are most effective and able to reduce and redistribute the workload women have experienced over time. The key focus is to establish a mechanism for changing what we call the gender and social norms and the public perceptions and attitudes that are related to unpaid care. These are norms that are normalized. People say, for us in our culture, something like that. Women are the ones who cook. In our culture, those are norms, they are deeply ingrained and as if they are stuck there and no one can change them. You hear in our culture, bathing a baby is a woman's place. Something like that. So we hope that we can shift that through this project. We'll use an implementation plan and action-oriented research design to provide evidence and practical tools and guidance to inform policies and actions to build a better and more equitable world. The project will, lastly, really, because without the policymakers, we won't be doing much. So the project has crafted and has planned to forge strategic partnerships with key stakeholders, especially the government of Uganda and the different bodies, the religious institutions, they are the custodians of a number of social norms. Private sector is very central in this work. We'll partner with them. The civil society is also one of the partners. The cultural leaders are very, very central to ensure that the uptake of the research, evidence, and scalability of the work that we have done really is applied and used for the purpose that we have planned it for. The evidence, we hope and believe will generate evidence and inform policies that maybe need to revise or even draft new policies. And also community actions to further address the social and gender norms, and especially in this era of COVID. So we do hope that this research, and we are we believe with your partnership, this will be possible. In Makerere, we believe that failure is not an option. So we believe that this research will deliver what we hope to deliver. Finally, we do appreciate your presence, both online and physically, as we launch this unique project. We've had a lot of research working on unpaid care, but this one is so unique that we are moving into action and shifting, redressing, changing the beliefs, perceptions that have been normalized for generations, but for the betterment of this country, but for the betterment of the world. So we will count on your support as we seek to redress the burden of unpaid care on women. Through recognition, we need to recognize that unpaid care is really important. All of us who are seated here, possibly in the morning, you already enjoyed part of it. Redistribute, also reduction and representation of unpaid care at all levels. So on behalf of Makerere University, but on behalf also of the team, the research team that has been working very, very hard, and I would like to tell this audience that the Uganda team is one of those which won the grant, and so many other countries had also applied, but we are among the few. So I thank the team for working so hard, because I don't think the grants are more than 10. So we are among the stars in even in IDRC who are championing this cause, that IDRC as an organization champions development that is inclusive, but more so on this program, promoting gender equality and empowerment of women, and also especially in the workplace. We need more women in official work, in workplaces. We don't need them more in the informal economy, but in the workplace. So we build for the future, for God and my country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Grace Bantebia, on those introductory remarks which shape in our minds, those who are viewing us and those online, what's going to proceed. Now we want to turn to our panel discussion, and the distinguished ladies and gentlemen there. I will hand over to the moderator for the panel discussion, and I need to get your name right, Doctor. Dr. Madina Glover, Senior Research Fellow, Economic Policy Research Center. I hand over to you to proceed with the panel discussion.
Thank you, Sam, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed, and for also the audience online, you're welcome. For those viewing at home, you're also welcome to join us in this discussion. As Professor has indicated, this is quite a unique discussion we're having today. So we hope we are a bit candid and open in the way we view these issues, because not only a women's issue, it's also a men issue, boys and girls. So on the panel, we have Sheikh Muhammad Ali, the Deputy Mufti, Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. But in this case, we see the Sheikh, but for me, we're looking at him as a representation from the religious community. And we do have Ms. Margaret Kakande. She's the head of the Budget Monitoring and Accountability Unit in the Ministry of Finance. Please do not hold her accountable as a ministry, but she's coming to share with us what's out there for us to take on board, even within the policy cycles. How can we do planning best around unpaid care? On my extreme left, we have Professor Paul Bukuluti, yes, and he's an associate professor at the School of Social Science and the Makerere University. So you're welcome to this discussion and to the audience as well. So I know the professor has put for us into context in terms of what we're discussing today. And starting with you, probably because some of these issues that we're discussing, as they've indicated, they're culturally ingrained and religiously defined. So Shay, in your role as a religious leader, we do agree that some care activities or some norms are actually positive. Let's not diffuse that all are negative. And they do actually shape the way we think, the way we behave. But we do also see that the negative social norms that actually do exist, that are actually derailing a certain kind of gender, even men actually, some norms actually derail you in moving forward. So as a religious leader, what have you seen in terms of how you have interacted in actually marrying these two, the religion and the cultural norms, in diffusing the negativity around unpaid care?
In the name of the Almighty God, the compassionate, the merciful, our host, Economic Research Center, and fellow panelists and dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen who are participating here. First of all, I thank you for having invited me to be part of this panel when I join my distinguished leaders to share a commitment towards addressing challenges of women. It is said that a bird has two wings and can never fly with one wing. This statement exemplifies the fact that women and men are two wings of a bird. Therefore, they ought to complement each other. They ought to fly together. It is also emphasized in the religious teachings that both men and women who do the righteous shall be able to earn a meaningful living in this life and in the hereafter. So, given that basis, we know very well that there are social and cultural norms plus some of those religious denominations that do not emphasize that factor. And therefore, in our midst, we still challenged with some practices that undermine the participation of women. Not only participation, but exploit the women for caretaking responsibilities that are not valued in terms of monetary and payment. Therefore, we as religious leaders under the Interreligious Council of Uganda, we can forge a forum, and we do, for dialogue about the responsibility of women and their contributions to the society. And we also know that since women cannot live alone, men and boys equally need to be enlightened about their social responsibilities towards the opposite sex. It is actually on the basis of ignorance and lack of awareness that some of the men and women tend to take it to their own to think that the female participants are less capable to deliver, especially in jobs that matter, in jobs that pay. But this is an old saying. This is very old saying because it has been proved scientifically that both of us have equal IQ, and actually some of us excel on the other. Sometimes you find the women excelling over the men, and you also find some men who can excel on the other. So we have equal capacity to actually deliver. Why not? If even in the spiritual arena, that God Almighty accepts the rituals of worship from both male and female at equal perspective, with no less, they are both to be rewarded accordingly. Therefore, it is our eminent duty to try to enlighten some of the religious affiliations and some cultural norms that actually fall short of that. And as I said earlier on, it's a matter of building capacity. It's a matter of building capacity, of understanding and appreciation of each other. Otherwise, there is no way we can underrate the other.
Yes. Thank you. You can help switch off that. Okay. Thank you, Shay, for that kind of opening to our understanding. how the religious institutions are actually creating to use their pulpits or their voices in terms of changing the norms around us, in terms of the understanding, to shifting these dialogues that involve not only women, but to realize and to actually accept and appreciate that men and boys actually have a role they play in shaping these norms. And one of the issues that the Shey really indicated is the issues of ignorance and lack of awareness. I think, Paul, this is where I'll bring you in. Given that you are someone who actually shapes and actually provides knowledge, how has the institution that or yourself tried to put into place in terms of these awareness creation campaigns within the students you teach or within the world you work in? Because we need to actually ban this issue called ignorance and lack of awareness. How have you done this, and how can we do this?
Thank you very much, Dr. Madina. Thank you, Dr. Madina, and all protocol observed. In terms of what academia is doing, first of all, as academia, we are very much interested in breaking down concepts to make sure we understand them very well. So one of the things that we have done in the academia is to define what we mean by social and gender norms. And what we know is that social and gender norms are unwritten rules. They are informal rules, but they define what is acceptable and what is acceptable in society. And these social and gender norms also come with rewards and sanctions. You are either punished for not adhering to them, or you are applauded or rewarded for actually adhering to those norms. Fortunately, there are positive social and gender norms that we need to emphasize through curricula, through research, through training, through socialization. Because as academic institutions and training institutions, we are one of the major socialization agents that either socialize or re-socialize people in order to contribute to development. So I just want to emphasize the fact that it is extremely important for us to integrate work on social and gender norms, especially in relation to this very important issue of unpaid care work in our curriculum. Because what we have at our disposal as training institutions, as people in the academia, is our curriculum. So we need to review our curricula to make sure that it integrates work on social norms, looking at how we promote positive social norms, but also how we address harmful gender and social norms that are keeping us underdeveloped, that are bringing suffering, that are not improving our quality of life. So the other thing we need to do, of course, as academia, we need to talk with evidence. Because sometimes you make a lot of noise, but when they ask you for evidence, you don't have this evidence. So we have mandate as people in academic institutions to do very good quality research, very good quality systematic scientific research to prove the case that actually harmful social and gender norms that are affecting redistribution of unpaid recognition, redistribution and reduction of unpaid care work are actually a huge problem, and we need to address it head on. But in order to convince the policymakers and the people who hold the budget to allocate budgets, we need to generate evidence and package this evidence in a way that is understood. Not to be ivory tower as such, but be able to talk and communicate in a language policymakers understand very well. I also just want to emphasize the fact that at all levels, we need to make sure that we package information around social norms, such that we can train our younger people and socialize them with more gender equitable norms and values that are going to promote recognition, redistribution, and reduction of unpaid care work.
Actually, Paul, just to go back, because you play a big role the same way the religious institutions do play, because this is a mindset issue, These issues are around, and as you've correctly said, they're informal rules that govern us. How have you really tried to change, how do you change the mind of somebody who has grown up knowing it's my role to sweep the compound as a boy, or it's my role to actually hold the baby and probably help mom to wake up in the night as a girl. So given that experience we have with these informalities, how have you really tried to change this within in terms of the evidence pack, in the practical sense of this? Because how do you change the mind to shift these kind of issues?
Thank you, Dr. Madina. We know that through evidence, there are models that have proved to work in terms of changing behavior, in terms of changing social and gender norms. And some of them have been actually piloted here in Uganda. What we need is to scale them up. One of them is the SASA model that has been implemented by Raising Voices and the Center for Domestic Violence Prevention, which are Uganda organizations. And actually, this model is now being implemented all over Africa. There is also the care model, the power model, which Professor Grace Bantebia explained, which is implemented by CARE in all the countries where they are operating globally. So there is evidence that behavior can change if we study systematically the way to change that behavior. One of the interesting issues is that culture is dynamic. Social norms are dynamic. They are not cast in stone. With the right incentives, people can change and following the right procedures. Thank you.
Thank you. At first, I thought you had actually speak that. I think it's important to understand that there are actually issues out there, programs actually kind of shift these norms that we need to borrow from. I think, Margaret, on the other hand, since you are from, I know budgeting, but you can speak from your wider experience that we know it's, as they've talked about informal rules, how can we bring in these informal rules that are actually not anywhere, but we want to actually advocate for them, place some budgets around them. So how can you go around budgets to actually include some of these issues we do not see and which are not actually planned for as and actually unrelated in your kind of work? So how can we do that?
Thank you very much, Madam MC. Morning, everybody. Protocol observed. So I think in terms of using the budget to address some of the unpaid care work, for example, one of the things that we do in budgeting, first of all, is to identify an issue. Surely unpaid care work is an issue. But the question then is, are institutions that are receiving budgets able to identify the relevant unpaid care work issues within their mandates? So for example, if you look at what are the issues, the key ones, if you look at unpaid care work? Issues of fetching water, fetching firewood, cooking, looking after kids. These are unpaid care functions. But if you look at the number of institutions that we have, for example, in government, most of them, they lie somewhere. So for example, you would ask a question, do people in the sector of water and the environment realize that there are so many people out there who are spending a lot of time fetching water? And if they do understand that, what are the mechanisms in terms of reducing that burden? Because implicitly, government is already providing water. But what they should be asking is, if you're actually giving water, the number of things you should be asking is, how do you save the time in terms of the distance, for example, where the water sources, to look at the quantity of the water that is coming from a given source, because you may find that you give people a tap and they spend the whole day lining up. Okay, the water is there, but you haven't really saved them time because they are still waiting in line. So some of those issues, people actually reflect upon them in terms of what extra can we do in terms of addressing those kind of issues. Right now, as I speak, a number of, for example, local governments are coming up with markets. And one of the things that now you can see if you go to most of these markets, they're including places for childcare. Why? Because it has been realized that most of these women, they come with kids. There's a lady here, she's in the garden, but she has a kid. I mean, this woman really, this is too much. So it happens also in markets. People come to the market, they're coming with kids, they have nowhere to leave them, but they have to care for them. And that is the unpaid care work we are talking about, which people carry on even at the place of work. So facilities are now coming, for example, in markets. But the question is, are these adequate? What are the facilities that we must put in those crashes to ensure that when these kids are in those, for example, in those markets, there is somebody to look after them. It's not a matter of just putting people, giving them a room, like a number of markets are doing. Here is a room, this is child care, daycare place. What are the facilities that we must put in those places to ensure that these women can come with kids and actually put the kids there and they go and sell their tomatoes, you know? So these are some of the things actually we can think through as people who are budgeting in terms of addressing these issues of unpaid care work. So I think the challenge to us on this side is actually understanding and being able to discern what are those issues that pertain to unpaid care work that are relevant to a given institution, for them to be able to pick them up, prioritize them, and budget for them. Because as you know in government, if you're not a priority, you're not funded. So how do people actually appreciate that actually these are key issues that are affecting, for example, performance in a sector, they are prioritized, and then of course they are funded. So I think that is for us what I see as the current challenge.
Thank you, Margaret. And I think that's very critical. Indeed, as we indicated, government only take what is priority. But even to date, we can see even the way the budget is going, is that what's the priority like? So we are hoping, if we are championing this issue around unpaid care, how can we best make it a priority within government? So if is it related to infrastructure, so how can we bring in aspects of unpaid care if priority of government is infrastructure related? So what I'm getting from Margaret is if it's what are the distance, and distance is also infrastructure related, then we need to champion some of these issues as Matia Kasaija goes to read this budget that's actually related towards reducing the distance, the time spent towards unpaid care. Shay, given that actually I usually see you interacting with the president, I see you interacting with these honorable ministers and members of parliament, how best can we try to fit into these issues of policy of unpaid care, given that for sure I've indicated we need two birds, and the bird is a lady and a gentleman. So how can we convince these policymakers that where the saying says behind every successful, I think, man, there is a woman, and usually they say behind every successful woman there is nothing, you know? So usually, so how best can we do this?
Well, as religious leaders, we always strive to support policy shifts for engaging men in support of women's economic empowerment. And all those bills or draft bills that really drive towards that, we come up in support of them. We usually engage all the legislatures, the parliamentarians, and even the executive, including His Excellency the President at times. We pay courtesy call to emphasize our concern about the fate of women. We do not cease at that, but we engage our flock, the religious clerics, to be empowered, to get down to the root, to engage everybody to get involved. And we have written up booklets. We call them pastoral letters, which help someone to engage in matters of gender equality and rights of the women, so that when they do preach or they do engage the communities, they are actually guided with certain principles that cut across not only one religious affiliation, but the different denominations. So we print out, we publish, and we also write in papers to address these concerns. We only challenged somehow by the capacity to go down to the grassroots, whereby we seek support from all those who are of goodwill to this project. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Do we have any burning question from the audience that you want to pose to the panelists? That we, at least 3 questions for now. Any question that you would like to pose to the panelists, where this is the time? Anyone? Oh, it's really been very clear. Okay, you can introduce yourself. The microphone, I think we need a microphone.
Thank you. My name is Agnes Kisembo. I work with UN Women. I'd like to appreciate the organizers of this dialogue. It's a very good platform for us to dialogue and jointly come up with solutions that can help us lift the burden of unpaid care from the women. I just wanted to find out from the Minister of Finance, Margaret Kakandi, and also from our religious leader here, what are we practically doing to address gender roles in terms of coming up with policies and programs that can practically lift the burden of unpaid care work? What I'm saying is, for example, our professor from Makerere said we need to put in place the right incentives. And I want to specifically quote an example of the cooking as a gender role for women. We all know traditionally cooking is a gender role for women. But we also know that, like in private sector, in hotels, most of the chefs are men. And we don't question how are the men attracted to do the cooking in hotels. It's because of remuneration. So can we think proactively on how to tag a price on these gender roles so that we attract more men, where they come on board and work willingly because they know at the end of the day or at the end of the month there is a paycheck? That direction. Then in terms of technology, what innovations and technologies are we advocating for that can encourage men without feeling shy, but it can encourage the men to participate willingly still in these gender roles? For example, if someone is using cooking stones and another one is using a cooker, an electronic cooker or a gas or a kettle, most men will find it easy to boil water for themselves without waiting for you. And that is still a gender role. So I'm looking at those practical things that we can advocate for. We get out of lamentation, but think proactively on how we can encourage the men participate in these gender roles. Then the danger. We know that women are 51% of this population and the men are 49%. The gender broadly. What does that mean in terms of leaving women in work that does not economically reward them for a very long time in terms of economic growth? If we get that bigger picture, if we leave these women doing work that does not economically reward them, what implications does it have for the economy in the broader sense? What implications does it have for the women when they grow old? Because they have not saved, so they will not benefit from the National Social Security Fund. It is those who are involved in the pay work that benefit from such arrangements. So what does that mean for the woman who does not have a health insurance in the long run? So those are the questions I would like to put across as we discuss and as we come up with solutions to think proactively in policy-wise, programmatically, what we can do. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. I think because we're running out of time for the TV coverage, I would request the panel shall respond to some of these after the launch of the project. And we do still have some more questions coming in from the floor. I've seen 2 hands up. So I would request, let's pause on the questions because I think, I know Sam wants to shut us down, but the conversation is going to continue after this. Sam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Medina. And I noticed that the debate was starting to catch fire, but we have some official things to deal with also. So bear with us, but we shall come back, as she said. We are going to move to the official part now of this event. And the launch of the program was supposed to be presided over by the Minister of State for Gender and Culture, Honorable Peace Mutuzo, but she hasn't been able to come here because of other engagements. However, she has sent a representative, and right now we'll invite her, Ms. Makerere Doreen. Please come and represent the minister for us. And after that, we will call Professor, I want to get the name right. Professor, we'll call you up, and then we shall do the launch of the program. So let's invite the Ms. Makerere Doreen.
Good morning to all. Makerere Doreen, as already introduced, and I bring to you the speech for the Honorable Minister, Peace Mutuzo, who hasn't been able to make it this morning. I read the speech. Honorable Members of Parliament, heads of government ministries, departments and agencies, development partners present, members of the private sector, members of the academia, members of the media fraternity, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good morning. On behalf of the government of Uganda, I'm pleased to join you at the project launch that touches a somewhat intriguing yet often overlooked issue in our society, social and gender norms, and how they have shaped unpaid care work and our engagement in the world of economic activities. I am delighted to note that the government is represented here today. This demonstrates the level of commitment and builds on strong partnerships that this government has built between research, academia, and policymaking. The issue being discussed today is without doubt central to our country's attainment of its Vision 2040, as well as the global SDG agenda. Notably, Sustainable Development Goal 5, Target 5.4 SDG calls for the recognition and valuation of unpaid care work and domestic work, and the promotion of shared responsibility with the household and the family. Simply put, unpaid care work is the glue that holds families, communities, and ultimately the nation together. Unfortunately, whereas unpaid care work is highly appreciated and paid in the developed world, it remains largely unappreciated and unpaid in developing countries, Uganda inclusive. More so, its disproportionate burden is shouldered by women as compared to men. Consequently, women Disproportionate care burden shapes their decision on labor market entry and departure, work hours, choice of jobs, and aspirations for career progression. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all correctly observed and lived this, the COVID-19 pandemic actually escalated and brought to the limelight unpaid care activities, with women taking the full burden of its effects. If past economic shocks are any guide, the effects of the COVID-19 crisis may linger, constraining and deepening unpaid care work as many jobs continue to be lost amidst uncertainties and school closures, among others. I know that while government has tried to address this issue of unpaid care work and the negative social norms through the National Gender Policy 2007, National Employment Policy, and the National Social Protection Policy 2015, unpaid care, highly driven by the patriarchal society we live in, continues to linger our homes, communities, and the workplace. Therefore, it is critical to ensure sustained policy support be tailor-made with actionable targets tackling gender and social norms that continue to drive unpaid care work in our homes, communities, and the workplaces. I hope that this project will identify for us the solutions that will guide our policy responses in shifting the negative norms into positive change for better recognition, reduction, redistribution, and representation of unpaid care work in our society. On behalf of the government, I wish to thank the International Development Research Center for providing valuable funding to this 3-year project. In addition, I congratulate Makerere University School of Women and Gender Studies, Economic Policy Research Center, and Care International, Uganda, upon winning the grant to implement this project. As a ministry, we look forward to a close working collaboration with you to ensure we get tangible outcomes that will steer the country further in attaining inclusiveness in social, political, and economic participation of its citizens. I therefore consider this project launched for God and my country.
Before you leave, Madam, we are going to do that launch for the TV at least. So, Prof, and yeah. So you can again say, I declare this project launched, and then.
So
are we ready? So you can come to the mic. Okay. You can come to the mic and announce.
Okay. Yes. Yeah, I think. Okay. So do I need this?
Shall get your mic there.
Okay.
Well, that is, can we call that unpaid work? Very well. We have come to the end of our live broadcast, and we are right on time. just a minute away. I need to speak clearly. Thank you all. The panel, we are going to come back to you. Those online and those on Zoom, please stay, don't leave. Those of you who have been live, we are coming to an end, and we shall hand you over to back to the studio. And Dr. Madin, I'm now going to come back to you. For those who have been live with us, we say bye for now. Dr. Madin, I hand back to you immediately so we continue.
Thank you, Sam, and we do thank those who have been online and those still going with us via Zoom. I saw Dr. Pisi's hand up. If the microphone can be led to her to ask her question.
Thank you very much for this presentation, for this project, which is very promising. My name is Pisi Musimenta, School of Women and Gender Studies, Makerere University. One thing that has intrigued me is what Sheikh raised, the lack of awareness and some bit of ignorance. So I would think as EPRC, and I'm very sure and confident that partnering with School of Women and Gender Studies, you can really shift the conversation. Rather than looking at unpaid care work and we continue looking at it as a burden, we do a cost-benefit analysis of unpaid care work. What do we lose if we do not participate in unpaid care work? I remember one time when I was doing my PhD, we had one of our colleagues who did not know, this was a man, who did not know how to prepare even rice, and we were actually teaching him how to prepare rice for himself in Norway. So if we come and look at the costs of not learning these skills as boys and girls are enough, I think the conversation will shift and we'll begin to look at it as something that we can benefit from, rather than saying it is a burden, it is a burden. We can have a different perspective, and that will attract many men, women, boys, and girls to actually work together. I think this is something that we can begin to look at. That was my comment.
Thank you, Pete. We are having the last question with the lady. You have declined? Okay. Then we can have the panel respond to this.
Thank you so much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. My name is Hope Jemima Kasimbazi. I spearhead a program at Private Sector Foundation Uganda called Early Steps, which promotes a business case for investment in the well-being of young children from 0 to 8. And we consider that if we do not invest in the well-being of young children, we shall have no business tomorrow. So I would like you to join us at Private Sector in advocating for support to upbring the children very well and support their mothers in doing the work. That's what at Private Sector we are doing, and I was just sharing and advocating that we need more support, particularly from government, to facilitate the young mothers. We have been advocating for setting up of child care centers. For example, Stanbic Bank set up a child care center at Marketplace in Gaba, and the mothers are doing well, the children are doing well, and they are caring for the caregivers. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I think let's first have a response to some of the issues raised. Then we can come back and pick another round of questions. And I think what we need to know is, for me, the child care centers are not necessarily women. You know, let's not again think they are putting in place the child care centers. It's again to save women from, going to work. Even the men, in case your wife dies, you never know. Or even if she's there, probably we need to see this shift that the man is actually going with the baby to office because there is a child care center, and it's your turn to look after the baby that day, So I think we need to see that kind of mindset, because this is what we are talking about, the informal rules. How do we change these informal rules? So back to Shay and the team for responding to some of the questions raised.
Well, to respond to Madam Agnes' question, what are we doing as religious leaders towards policies and programs? Indeed, at our religious institutions, we have adopted the method of inclusion of the women. We have opened up desks or units that actually deal particularly with that aspect. And of course, sometimes you lack skillful person to do that, and you may employ a male at the same time. But otherwise, even at policy level, at the major committees and councils, we are involving women and youth to get to attend to all matters discussed so that the message is taken down to the root. Regarding the innovations and technologies, I agree with Madame Agnes that these will facilitate enablement of both sexes to share roles. But at the same time, we need to look at some of the controversies that come up with this issue. Ideally, the image of a woman needs to be protected. The image of women must be protected. We see women where they lose their image and value because of, participating in such kind of career that actually do not protect them up. Equality is not uniformity. That one we must be able to understand. Some people think equality just goes by appearance. Like when you find women putting up men's dress to presume that they have become equal. Or even men go to the extent of putting on wigs and earrings and things like that. I think that would be exceeding the level. What is important is ideologically to understand the value of sharing the responsibilities. That's the most important thing. And we need to learn from the other context. I know the West have gone far in as far as that question is concerned, but there are still problems there. We need to learn out of that. Now, like the question of a mother with a kid in the field, in the agriculture field or whatever, I think there are so many issues that are missing out, especially from the policy level. Where is the welfare of the children? Like it is in the West. Okay, we argue that a woman must be given protection, this and that. But now, what does the state do towards the welfare of children? I think this is an issue that is really important, because if there is an enforcement of certain help that is provided in order to enhance the living or the health of the children, the woman will be helped to divert the attention to other aspects of living that will equally promote her sustainability. Yes.
Thank you for that. And I think, going off air, Sam, I think you can see the Shades being very candid in his advocacy for the government to do something about children. And I think, I know there are media people within here to write about that. And I think we like this kind of conversation, the way it's going. Margaret, do you have anything to pitch in? Then we shall come to you, Paul.
Thank you very much. Just a comment on some of the questions raised by Agnes. There was a question on programs that are being done. I think government has a number of programs which are actually, I can say by accident, addressing issues of unpaid care work. So for example, if you look at programs for supplying access to water, it's a very big program, both for rural water supply, for urban water supply. A lot of money that we are pumping into those programs, basically to ensure that everybody can access water. And we are also looking at how do we ensure that even in the villages, people can have piped water. So if that happens, then we are actually implicitly saving or, reducing the burden in terms of people fetching water. But government did not actually go out to say that we are addressing the issue of unpaid care work. No. For them, they're just saying we want to ensure that everybody has access to safe water. So it is by accident, if I can say. But also, we also have some other programs like under the energy sector. We have programs for promoting using energy-saving stoves, whereby people don't then have to go fetching so much firewood or long distances. But we are also now pushing for how do we ensure that people move to clean energy, so moving to gas. So now government policies to see how we can actually push the population to move to gas and stop using firewood, stop using charcoal. Of course, there are issues of cost. These are still being debated. How can this actually happen? But it is something which is being pushed into, but not in the spirit of unpaid care work. But it is something which is somehow going to happen. The issue of child care services, it is happening, but very slowly. So right now we are pushing for almost every institution to ensure that it has a child care center, whereby you have a professional nurse and people can come with their kids and actually leave them there in terms of having more productivity out of people who are in office, because when you have a sick kid at home, really, you can't really perform in office. So that is something which is happening, but very slowly. So you find that some institutions like Parliament, ironically, Parliament has a child care center. Actually, it was the first institution to actually have one. But we are also looking at how do we ensure this is rolled out to the rest of the institutions. I know that government policies to ensure that we have early childhood development in schools, but it's not happening very well in terms of ensuring that you also, for each school, should have actually a facility for nursery. It hasn't happened, but it's a government policy. So we have an issue of weak implementation of some of the policies, but the policies are there. There was an interesting comment from Agnes in terms of how do you tag a price to unpaid care work such that many can actually want to take it up. Like the example was cooking, that if you tag a price to cooking, then many can pick up the cooking at home. My question was, at whose cost? Who is going to pick up the price? It's very good, it can be done. You can actually monetize and say, anybody cooking, whether it's a woman or a man at home, you will get 500 per month. The question is, who is going to pay the 500? The man who is working? Because of course government will not pay it. So there the question is, who picks up the tag in terms of the price? And I think also it's the same debate that we've had in a number of circles in terms of when you're looking at the macroeconomic models in terms of determining growth or GDP, why don't you inbuild variables for unpaid care work? It's a very good thing, by the way, because then you would be able to appreciate that everybody is actually productive. Not people saying, you see, for me, my wife does not work. She's a housewife. Who said she does not work? Because people don't see unpaid care work as work. So it would be good for appreciation. But the question also would be, if, for example, in Uganda, you monetized all this work, and you put that into a model, and then our economy would look like it is a middle-income status country. What are the implications in terms of, for example, dealing with the development partners? Because, there are levels. If you're middle income, there are some things which you can't access. For example, you can't get World Bank money at a subsidized rate in terms of borrowing. So government, of course, is not willing. They say, how can we put figures into an economy, in a model? We inflate ourselves because we want to appreciate unpaid care work, and then we cut ourselves off some of the benefits of so those are the debates that are on the table, which we also have to look at in terms of what is feasible and what is not feasible. And then lastly, I want to mention something that Agnes also mentioned, the issue of pension. What happens to all these people who are unpaid, all of us who are housewives, who don't have money, we don't have a pension? Right now, government is coming up with a health insurance scheme. I've seen a paper from Ministry of Gender where the they're coming out with a criteria. What will be the criteria in terms of identifying the indigents or the beneficiaries? And some of the characteristics for anybody to access that insurance scheme is actually anybody who is out there, as long as you are classified as vulnerable. So you have persons with disability, chronic illnesses, the orphans, the women, whatever. So which means that actually if this thing takes off and it works, then all those people who are out there unemployed, whatever, they will actually benefit from this health insurance scheme. And those of us who are now actually pensionable will not actually access it. Because already now you have a pension, you don't have to be the same person again to go and benefit from the insurance scheme. Then Agnes asked a question that, what are the implications of us ignoring unpaid care work? Of course, in terms of not addressing them. Some time back, we tried to do a study in terms of what are the implications of not addressing gender inequality. And this was broader than just unpaid care work. And we did some calculations, and it was clear that actually if you do address some of these inequalities, you can have more GDP growth. We have the numbers. And when we did that study, we worked with University of ISS, this university in Netherlands, and with some guys in the World Bank. We were able actually, by then the government to actually pick up this issue of gender more seriously, because people usually used to think that gender is a gender thing for women. It's for the Ministry of Gender. You know, when you talk gender, these are women issues. But then when you bring in issues of economic growth, then the economists begin saying, say that again. So they were able to say, okay, maybe there is something here, something that we can actually look at in terms of what are some of these things we can do as government. Because for them, their interest is not actually to address issues of gender inequality in the good spirit, but they're looking at this other thing, the benefits of having GDP growth. So there are different ways of actually communicating the issues and getting solutions. But I must say that there are a number of things which are happening in government which will implicitly address unpaid care work, but it's not being done in a focused way. And the objective is not actually to address unpaid care work, but it's to actually address other things. So I think maybe what we have to do is how do we ensure that actually government then thinks of this as an issue, and already we are doing things, and tag on other questions in terms of the things that are being done, the way we are doing them, to be able actually to meaningfully kill two birds with one stone. Thank you.
Paul, in case you have something to add before we come into the next round.
Yeah, I just want to re-emphasize the fact that we need to be deliberate in terms of gender transformative programming, because if we leave it to be an accident, we will be implementing gender-blind policies, gender-blind programs, and the costs are going to be very high. Because I know that we are working with traditionally, or in terms of classical things, we are working with sectors that are traditionally not gender, because not like Ministry of Gender, like energy, like water, like infrastructure, which are not used to dealing with gender issues. So if we are not deliberate in terms of gender transformative programming, gender transformative policies, then we will still maintain patriarchy. You provide all these services, but they simply empower the man, and they are not empowering the woman. You create infrastructure, but still the man is controlling mobility of the woman. You give a woman financial inclusion, but she does not have say in decision making. So we must be very deliberate in terms of gender transformative programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think most of the issues actually mentioned here bring to the forefront what actually we all live and experience. I think even when this discussion came on, even when the project was coming out, I thought of that Kenyan lady parliamentarian when she came into parliament with a baby to breastfeed, and there was all chaos, even I think worldwide there was this chaos. And it was all about that kind of unpaid. She wanted to participate, but she had this duty that she's moving around with someone's feed. And she said, let me go with this, and then they said the law does not permit you to enter a parliament to debate while you're doing this kind of activity. And this is some of the things we are perpetrating. And how can we remove this negativity that, indeed, I can't come with the baby to participate in parliament. It does not necessarily derail me in the brain to bring on board. but also knowing that some being at work, there is someone behind home who's supporting his being at work. Probably your high pay and commitment at work is because there's high level of support somewhere. And that to me is still GDP. That's part of the GDP component that actually we need to do that. So how do we make people appreciate this? Because indeed unpaid care is not bad. Because some people really do enjoy cooking, irrespective of gender. Some enjoy doing this without necessarily making noise about it. But how can we make those appreciate that I do contribute to this home in a positive sense, such that you don't look at me as someone as redundant, a burden, but that your success is my success and I contributed to it. And then probably we'll have these less issues we're seeing in the media, whereby if a spouse dies, they feel she was sitting at home. There's no need for you to share into the property. So how do we remove these issues to appreciate what is being discussed here? So we can, any more questions probably to the panel? Yes, please. You introduce yourself. We'll have just like 15 more minutes, then we'll close the panel and the event.
Thank you very much to all our panelists and also the organizers of this meeting, which is very timely for us. My name is Sheila Kawamara Mshambi, and I'm the Executive Director of EARC, which is the Eastern African Sub-Regional Support Initiative for the Advancement of Women. I feel this is a project that is really timely for us as EARC, because we work with women cross-border traders, and these are traders that work in 2 countries. They, by virtue of their work, they have to cross to the other country. And by virtue of their gender, they have to have babies at times. Like the lady working in the garden in that poster, she is working there. The same applies to the women. So sometimes they are denied to move with the children across the borders as they do their work. So I hope that this project can address some of these issues for unpaid care work for women cross-border traders, and also look at how this care work really limits the expansion of their businesses, how it makes them more vulnerable to GBV. I know EARC is trying to study this, but now attending this launch, I realized that maybe we need to link up so that the people implementing the project, we are able to lead them to the organized groups of women cross-border traders that we work with, so that their voice also comes out. Because often they are so remote, and we forget that their workplace is actually going back and forth across the borders. I thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Madanda, then yourself, and then John. 3 more questions.
Thank you very much. I'm Madanda Ramadan. I work with Care International as a program manager. I think I just have a question for Sheikh Ali, and then also for Margaret Kakande. But first, of course, a small comment. In this gender programming work around unpaid care work and gender norms, we know that to have change, you need to operate at different levels. And I think Sheikh was very articulate at what the religious institutions are doing, what beyond actually one religion, the Interreligious Council, but also mentioned that there are limitations of going down in terms of capacity. And now that worried me a bit, because we need to interrogate that, because the construction of what we do happens a lot at the family level, at the community level, and the neighborhoods, and so on. So from your perspective, how do you see us moving this intervention at that level, from your perspective as a religious leader? How can we impact families, communities at that level, given the limitation you have in terms of capacity as a religious leader? And then Margaret, of course, was highlighting some of these resistances that we get to model unpaid care work. And we know that countries that have probably done that or that have said they are middle income, etc., have lost out on development aid because they are seen as richer. So I was wondering, because to be able to move some of these things again, policy level engagement, national level engagement is very important. And actually, if change happened there, we would have massive, change at other levels. As we know, the power of government and, its reach, its resources, etc. So how do you see us moving forward? How can we engage here at the national level to ensure that issues of unpaid care work and maybe even gender programming find their way in that policy arena effectively? What is the practical strategy? Because we know there'll be that pushback, but how can we move in that direction? I hope I'm clear now. Thank you very much, Sheikh and
you.
Margaret.
Yes, you introduce yourself, then your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Eusebia Muchaveine. I'm the Director for Gender Mainstreaming Directorate at Makerere University. Thank you very much for the information and views you have shared with us. I want to pick on two things and to pick your brains, especially Margaret, on who meets the cost when we say that we should put a cost to unpaid care work. I want to say that we can begin by saying the partner should pick the cost. Why do I say that? I want us to think more critically. When a bachelor is working, they normally hire house helps. Is that right? The moment they fall in love and get married, they say kwaheri to all those responsibilities. We have had partners who say, my wife cannot work. She needs to first take care of the children. And we have even seen women who voluntarily, and I put that in quotes, withdraw from the labor market because they cannot cope with the unpaid care work and their work, depending on the circumstances. So I think for us to say we cannot put a cost simply because we don't know who is going to meet the cost, I think is not thinking more critically about the problem we have at hand. Because if people are going to withdraw from the labor market because there is something that needs to be done, I think it is important that in terms of programming, we face the reality squarely. And that's why I really believe that we need to be very deliberate in terms of programming, because it won't happen. I'll give an example. We have a very progressive legislation in the Public Finance and Management Act, and I'm very glad people like Margaret have been instrumental in influencing some of these legislations. But for as long as we cannot go down to see what this means in practice, then they will remain on the books. Similar to what the Sheikh alluded to, we realize these things, we appreciate, but going down is problematic. So as long as we do not have the strategies to go down to see how these policies and programming becomes practical in everyday life, then we shall continue the lamentations. Many organizations do not have child daycare centers because many, they are male-dominated, and since children, taking care of the children, at least those very first time is a woman thing, it's never a priority. The biggest problem is appreciating what does it mean. You have a child you want to breastfeed exclusively for 6 months. It's as if they are doing you a favor even to give you maternity leave. Nobody somewhere, a policymaker, does not think that you're being given maternity leave is because you are contributing to the national productivity. So I think the problem is in the mind. And if we could challenge partners to pay for that care work, I think we would begin a conversation on a different panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Then John, then we shall come back to the panel. As you're walking towards the microphone, you do have some of these wild thoughts, but you know, some of these issues are willingly put, but who will pay you? Someone tell you, no way, this is part of you, you know, but that's kind of same mindset. How do we change the mind? Yes, John?
Oh, thank you very much, the panelists. My name is John Odiek from the New Vision. Just before I forget, about 3 weeks ago, Parliament passed the Employment Amendment Bill. I've forgotten the date, but it was late in the evening, and I think not many people, I was there. I know Kadaga is passionate about women and child-related issues. A lot of new provisions were made there relating to what Madam just talked about, the going on leave, breastfeeding, a lot of those issues. So I'm sorry I cannot give you, it was detailed, but I think we need to look at it. It provides for a lot of issues. Domestic workers, casual workers, migrant workers, there are a lot of provisions to ensure that the people, you know, what they say, the minister was talking about having a decent work, you know, ensure that everybody has some sort of decent work. But the other thing which I wanted to raise, to question is, when we talk about these centers, I think we need to talk more about what is inside those centers. I mean, those rooms for breastfeeding. Sometimes in Uganda, I am not happy when we say this thing about registration. Let's register, let's register. We should talk more about when we register, what happens. So when we have these child care centers, what should be in those rooms? Do we need tables? Do we need sanitizers? Because there's going to be a risk for having a room which is empty. I'm told in Gulu Market, they provided a room, but then URA took it up for an office because URA was able to rent it. So I think it was not being used or something. So that was my question, that we should talk more about what do we expect in these rooms. The debate should move away from we need these rooms. Yes, we need them, but what should be there? The other thing also is that I thought, Madina, I could ask you this, that sometimes people have different skills when you ask men to start doing certain things. So I observed that in nursery school, when a child was brought crying, there was a man there and then there was a lady. And I saw the lady more sympathetic to the child than the man. So I thought that this is an area where women could do, because sometimes when you give a man a baby to hold, then you know the fear. Yeah.
John, that's a mindset issue, and probably stereotyping this issue that we've seen videos going around where there's a lady beating their own children. So I think that's a mindset and probably empathetic, you know.
Then the other thing I wanted us to think of or to question is this. Alternative pays exist. Sometimes people who are whether maids or shamba boys, you know, in our societies we have those people working, and then they are looked after, fed, and all that. But I'm not worried when they start asking for payment. Maybe they are not able to pay them. You know, in some places people work and then you feed them, or they are given something, not direct payment. And also it helps them to be active. Because now if these people are inactive, I think some social activities like working for Red Cross, you may not necessarily earn money, but it's a service you give. Then also that if economies, as you say now, if you remove away the time somebody was doing something, now is not doing it, what alternative should they be doing? If those people are doing something at least, even if they are not paid, what else would they be doing? We are like to create a lot of people now with a mindset that every little work I do, I must be paid money. I've not read all the paper, I'm sorry. Otherwise, those are some of the things I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I think, let me come back to the panel to respond to some of the issues that have been raised. And I think this will be the last bit from the panel because we are trying to beat on time. And as you're speaking, you can also give your final shot, at least 2 to 3 minutes each, and we can close the panel. Over to you, Shay. Yeah. Then Margaret and Paul.
Responding to the question that was put to me as regards to the grassroots. You know, the grassroots is compounded with the complex situation. First of all, unfriendly environment, unfriendly working environment, and then illiteracy, and also poverty on the ground there. So that is really a complex thing which requires a lot. If you have to send them someone, he may not be there for more than a day. So you need to train those who are within them, whose conditions of living also is also a problem. So what we usually suggest and do is to provide for them services like the boreholes, to try to help them in how to access good water, building health centers, and also awarding them bursaries and scholarships for their children to get up to good schools and things like that. But, you know, that is really very little to eliminate the problem down there.
Thank you. Margaret?
Thank you very much. Before I conclude, I just want to say something about engaging policymakers from Dr. Madanda. What should you do to ensure that actually you get policymakers on your side? I think you already have the Ministry of Gender on board, but I would also recommend that if you want other stakeholders like Ministry of Finance, National Planning Authority to be part of the journey, engage them now. If you're doing research and you don't engage a policymaker at the point of starting, don't bother at the end, because they have to agree what you're looking at, they have to agree the methodology, they have to agree a number of things that you're testing. What is your hypothesis? What are you testing? And then you travel the journey together. So once you have the findings, they are part of you, they actually just use the findings. I think, Dr. Madanda, you know our experience when we had UPAP. UPAP was a research program. We were doing it with Oxfam, but because it was sitting within Ministry of Finance and we are part of it, whatever came out we are using in terms of making a difference, in terms of policy making, because we knew what was being done, we knew the methodology, we knew everything. So engage them now, and then you won't have any hassles in terms of convincing them, calling dissemination meetings, because they will come and listen to you, but so what? They will leave everything where you're seated. So just as I'm concluding, this is a very good program. Thank you so much for actually this initiative. Like Shira said, I think this is very timely in terms of us talking about this key problem of unpaid care work, because I don't think we are paying enough attention as a country in terms of what we can do to address it. But like I've said, please engage more stakeholders in terms of what can be done in terms of policy making. But also, we have a community, they call it a community something program now, under the programs, under human capital development. We have a whole component, which is for community development. And it's basically for mindset change. I think from what our colleague John was saying there, we need a lot of talking among ourselves first of all, to agree on the definition of work. When can unpaid care work become work? Because if your kids wash plates after lunch, you don't have to pay them. So in this case, I think we need to actually have this kind of dialogue. When does unpaid care work actually become work, requiring payment? Because all of us have to do something in the house. You can do a bit of cleaning, but you don't expect to be paid. So we have to set those limits. When can work in the house demand for payment? And I thank Ozobia, who said that partners should pay for it. Yes, husbands, pay for your wives, pay for the work they are doing. If you're not already doing it in terms of giving them money for their hair, for whatever, find another way of giving them cash. So that is a good initiative in terms of, give them more cash for them to be able to do things if they think what you're giving them is not adequate given what they are doing. So I think that is for us who are on both sides. We do research, but at times we are on the side of policymakers. This is something actually I'll be part of it because I think it has a lot of interest for me as a person, not as a ministry, for me as a person. But I'm encouraging you that please engage my ministry at an early stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think this has been very enriching to listen to the questions coming on board and also to my fellow panelists giving responses to all these very important issues. For me, I just want again to re-emphasize the fact that we need to generate evidence and our evidence should be believed. So I want to re-echo what Margaret is saying, that we need to work together with stakeholders right from the beginning. We need to walk the journey together and not just run to them with the findings, but we need to look at the methodology, the tools, the sampling, the questions, and set them together. So I think participatory research, which is engaging all stakeholders right from the start, is going to be very helpful. I just have one comment about this issue of skills and then not doing away with volunteering. The issue is that if volunteering is happening, it should cut across. It should not focus on only women or girls. It should be redistributed. So volunteering should be distributed among all of us and not just, be biased to one gender. It is as if women are created and formatted to volunteer, and men are formatted not to volunteer, to do paid work. So we just need to be fair, and we need social justice here to make sure that there is equality, not uniformity, but equality in terms of values, in terms of norms, in terms of what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I think Shay had your parting shot. Sorry, I didn't get back to you. So your 1 minute parting shot to...
Well, whereas women's empowerment is essential to achieving gender equality, we must simultaneously engage men to be actively committed to redistributing power in both their personal lives and in larger spheres, framing gender equality as something men have a stake in and can benefit from can be effective way to motivate more men and boys to be involved. Of course, as religious leaders, we pledge to collaborate with everyone concerned in this to promote the welfare of women, and not only the welfare of women, because usually we fall into a mistake when we ignore the boy. Always the cause of the problem can be in not handling both equally. We need to attend to both of them so that they do the right thing. Thank you, and I wish you the best.
Thank you, Shay. Let me read this one comment which is online, and apologies to the online audience. Actually, I'd forgotten them.
There is this one that Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development should do more to create awareness on paternity leave as well as support mothers who face job loss following pregnancy and maternity leave. This is so rampant in the informal sector. I think that's one thing they've noted. Then does Ugandan law provide for flexible working hours for new mothers? If yes, we need broad implementation across the board. If no, this should be considered as a recommendation. I know, Professor, as you're closing, and we had closed the panel, but I think they've talked about issues around the law before, and I think some of these around the law were talked about by the employment bill. So I think we need to revisit this employment bill to see what's in it in terms of the hours of breastfeeding mothers that are coming out. So thank you, online audience, for listening and participating, and for the active participation of the audience here today. And one more like, one thing is that equality is not uniformity. So that's one of the things I think I've gotten out. So, and also, the other bit is, I know Paul talked about it, that how can we have not volunteering that is not soft coercion, you know? That I'm voluntarily doing something, but it's because I was coerced to do it, because someone stood, you withdrew from the labor market because you had no choice. And either it was you or me, and then of course someone looks at you very softly, expecting you to say, I will leave, you know? That's soft coercion. So this kind of debate that you don't necessarily need to be, it's automatic that when the child is losing, or we have these issues going around within the media that the maids are actually being ruthless to our children, and you're both working, then who's leaving the work? So then someone looking at you very politely, and you say, okay, I will stay. But it's not because you're willing to stay. So thank you for this kind of engagement, and it's because of we're running out of time. I'll hand over the microphone and to the event coordinator, Sam. Over to you. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Thank you, Dr. Madina. And the panel, you are free to take your seats. I don't think the seats have been hot, but we appreciate your deliberations and your thoughts.
Sorry.
I'm not sure the moderator was, we were co-moderating. I'm not sure the male co-coordinator was supposed to ask, so I just have some thoughts before I invite the professor to close. I was just wondering, is it possible to monetize all unpaid work realistically? I'm not asking for an answer, I was just thinking. Is the parameter monetization? And I guess as the project goes on, clarity will be sought along those lines. I call her a home caretaker. Some say maid. We have her at home to assist when my wife works. So is that an intervention? Does that help home care monetization? I don't know. We pay her, and I think well. So is that an intervention? And yeah, also the realism of up there in the upper echelons of society, educated women and so on, some of these things can happen quickly. But those pictures we see there, what's the realistic translation of the aspiration? To what extent? That was just me thinking, giving myself the advantage of being on the microphone. Finally, let's invite Professor Grace Bantebia from School of Women and Gender Studies, very instrumental in this occasion, to close for us with the remarks.
Thank you very much, moderator, for the excellent job that you have done this morning. On behalf of the research team, and also on behalf of Makerere, which is the academic lead on this research project, I would like to thank all of you for the brilliant ideas, for the intensive discussion, and I wish we could go on the whole day. And it is exactly for the same reasons, the many reasons you have raised, that this project was conceived. The very many questions you have asked, we had them day and night in crafting this project. And so we are really very super excited that you are raising those issues, also proposing a number of things that we could look at during the research project. This is a 3-year project, and we have carefully crafted it differently to make sure that we generate evidence that will be really taken up by the different stakeholders. And in a few days' time, we'll have another engagement, because part of the project is to engage policymakers and all the other stakeholders at the very, very beginning. In a few days' time, we'll be discussing our inception report with those key stakeholders so that they start the journey with us to ensure that the issues of unpaid care are dealt with. It's very common in meetings and discussions, wherever unpaid care comes up. And we always raise the issue, women, they even enjoy doing it. Women, they're more empathetic and so on, and how can they be paid and so on. And it's all okay. And I think one of the core aspects we are dealing with in this project is the mindset. And the mindset that has been set up by the social norms and gender norms, which we believe they are normal, they are normalized, people believe that's what should happen. When they look at each other, and a norm, when you look at your groups, in our group, in our culture, in our home, is so deeply ingrained in the system, in the social network. And there are no written rules anywhere, but we follow them. And so we want to really look at those norms using particular strategies and shift them for the betterment of everybody and for the development of this country and other countries. When I started, we know this evidence clearly shows that women and girls spend over 24 hours in unpaid care, which means the other opportunities of education, of working in banks, in other agencies, is reduced. We also noted that despite evidence is there, that despite government's promotion and other stakeholders, we still have unpaid care not talked about, not recognized, not even counted. So when we talk about costing it, we're not talking about just paying this woman at the level, just, okay, you cook, then we give you 50,000 or 20,000. It's more a structural and system issue we're dealing with. One, we begin with recognizing that actually these are important activities that are happening. What is currently existing is they're normalized. If you're a woman, full stop, you're crafted, you are born and what? I think my colleague said, and formatted. Born and formatted for unpaid care work. That's not true, because the evidence shows that actually no one is formatted for that, but society has crafted us. So we are very happy to work with you And we are happy you have come in, and we are going to invite you many, many times, because we have a whole program for engaging different stakeholders. But we also have a whole program of instituting real measures that we hope will lead to change. And these measures are at individual level. We are going to engage men as men and boys. We are going to engage community leaders as power holders and stakeholders. We are going to engage district officials. We are going to engage at national level. So it's very, very comprehensive. And we really pray that you work with us to really address this issue, which has deprived a group of people opportunities to perform, opportunities to be, opportunities to serve their country. So on that note, I want to thank you once again, and also thank the team that put this together, and our funders, really IDRC, for accepting that our ideas were noble. And as Makerere, this is our business these days. Right now, we have a research that is going on. Those who are around, you can come to Social Science, to College of Humanities on Thursday. We are going to showcase projects that are shifting norms. And one of those projects is on sexual harassment, reducing and eliminating sexual harassment from institutions of higher learning. And many of you could learn from that project of what we are doing, maybe other organizations, but it's an organization that engages men as positive fighters, a part of the solution, not part of the problem. It's a whole that sexual harassment is for all of us. It's a responsibility for all of us, and we are saying the same for unpaid care. Unpaid care business is a responsibility of all of us, and we must recognize